lovely souls, beautiful souls, whatever you feel best about being, about how others refer to you. Choose the best today. Today's message is it's one that's been percolating in my mind for a little while. A couple months actually, but it's one of those things that I think just doesn't happen until the moment is divine, and this is apparently that moment. The message that wants to come from me to you is about releasing the broken. Releasing the broken within you and releasing, it felt like for a while it was called the world of the broken, like a pocket world or a dimension or even the timeline. And as I put together my thoughts for this video today, or this audio today, I suppose, whatever way you want to view it, it felt much more like, no, it's like an island, like Isle of Broken, like Fantasy Island on Pinocchio, or the Island of Misfit Toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's a place it's a place in time and space that is real. And so much of our collective of humanity is like trying to live on this tiny Isle of the Broken. That's what it feels like. And what my guides are telling me is that this is part of, well, it's not what must be done, but it's a part of a overall larger mission that many twins will feel called to. They'll feel resonance with it and feel like, yes, this is part of my journey. This is part of my light work. Well, to recognize, first of all, just how powerful of a manifester you are. That everyone is, though most especially when you've gotten into your light work enough to become light enough to feel like you no longer desire to have the experience of being broken or of seeing others as broken, then it's time to acknowledge and feel grateful for and then release the Isle of the Broken, the place where you once probably sat in a throne and commanded all things. About, no, like it feels like a theme of a split that's been going on, hero, villain, victim, and it's a way that we as humanity have like divided things for a very, very long time, going to this place where, and we play all roles, and all other people play all roles, and it doesn't always stay the same. Sometimes we're in different roles of it, but the hard thing is that you don't want to lose what you can have in such experiences, but you also don't want to hold on to such experiences. Like, you don't want to get to a nihilistic place where you're like, well, there's no such thing as heroes, villains, and victims, and so I shouldn't bother saving that special flower that grew up out of the yard, out of nowhere, that I really find is very pretty and I don't want it to be mowed. Or, well, I'm not going to bother trying to help anybody because there's no heroes, and at some point they're going to be in a different part of their journey and might not understand me, or might use what I give them for other means, or might leave me, or things like that. Like, or might not see me as the hero of the story, things of that nature. And then when we have villains and victims, like, we tend to see villains as either all bad or mostly bad, and in that way they become a part of. And we see victims as people who are ultimately sick and either cannot be helped or cannot see a difference, and they too are broken. And the irony being that, in order to be a hero, to be able to defeat the villains and save the victims, we also are telling ourselves that we are broken too, that the world is broken. And in the moments that we don't tell ourselves that we're broken, then we tell ourselves that we must be the heroes, that we must create stability, we must save people, we must rescue we must build our fortresses so that we can keep our loved ones safe within and keep our squishy parts safe within, and things like that. And the main message that seems to be coming through, it's like, this is more of a learning experience for those who choose it, is that, like, that which we others is coming from within. We're observing it in ourselves. When we see others as broken in one form or another, and or we see ourselves in a hero-like position, even if we don't call it that, or we can justify our own imperfections, when we're still like in an energy of that some sort of thing, then we are observing the brokenness of others, and then by as a natural law of the universe, we are observing brokenness in ourselves. And then we tend to get into getting caught on the shards of shattered glass along our path that is from all the times that things like ended or didn't go the way we thought they would, or that we got triggered or experienced pain, or had simply, like, sometimes the pain can simply be that a pleasure was taken away that we really enjoyed. Like, there's all sorts of things. But for those of you twins that feel called to this one, it's recognizing that you are such a powerful manifester, that it's not that it's not that brokenness has never existed and that you got it wrong. It's not that you were doing things wrong because you didn't know better or things like that. No, it's not about that. It's about what reality do you want to move forward in now? Do you want to move forward into a reality of loops and spirals where you're constantly like in and out with being hero, villain, victim? Because in order to be somebody's hero, like the hero to the victim, you have to be a villain to the villain. And in that villain's timeline and space, they are the hero and you're the villain, and you're taking the victim, things like that. You're constantly in that kind of drama triangle of it, for lack of a better way to put it. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. There are plenty of pocket worlds and dimensions and timelines in this world that need that energy. If you feel called to participate in the hero, villain, victim paradigm, go for it. You're needed. Go where you feel needed. Somebody said, I don't know if it was Maverick or somebody else, but somebody said, look for where there is no light and shine your light there. Like, if that's where you feel like your light is called to, go to it and feel good about it, even if it separates you on your path. Likewise, if you feel like releasing the Isle of the Broken, where hero, victim, villain is the predominant energy theme going on, then that's okay too. If this is where you feel that you are called to do your light work, then walk this way, talk this way, like, get in your groove and become comfortable with that. But also recognize a large majority of the world feels comfortable. They feel in their comfort zone being in the old paradigm of hero, villain, victim. And it's not that they're going to stay there, or even that it'll be challenging or difficult to like help co-manifest a reality where the brokenness is not the predominant energy any longer. It's just that, you might be on your journey a little bit solo for a while, and not because of any sort of punishment, or not because, yeah, there might be a lot of misunderstandings, but it's not, that's irrelevant. What it actually is that when spirit gets you into your moments of solitude, it's because it wants you to manifest what you want. Without any distractions, without anybody whispering in your ear about what's right or wrong, or what's scary or feels safe, or things like that. And so when you get into those moments, it's your choice. Do you want to go back to the Isle of the Broken? Do you want to stay there? It's okay. Maybe you got some more stuff to learn there. Maybe there's some more light work to bring into others who are in there before you set sail away. This feels like something that at some point, at least everybody in this lifetime, timeline, things like that, are going to get to at some point. They're going to want to. Because the Isle of the Broken, no matter how much empathy and compassion and sympathy we may feel for those who remain on it while we set sail to see what else there is to see, it gets exhausting. It's not a place, it's a place where your cup is constantly empty. Where it takes it's almost like, what would it be like if you were on another planet and the gravity was like I don't know what the math is. I want to say 10 times heavier, but I feel like if I was talking to an astrophysicist, they'd be like, you'd be squished. So I don't know if that's relevant, but I'm sure you know what I mean. It's like increased. It's let's say it's double what we're used to experiencing it as. And so when you're walking around in this Isle of Brokenness and its own gravitational pull, like it takes twice as long to walk to get water. It takes twice as long to chop and carry wood. It takes twice as much effort to start a fire and find food. It takes, that much more effort to feed yourself, to drag yourself through your daily tasks and your self-care and things like that. So even if you know what you need to do and you feel good about doing it and you know how to refill your own cup and care for yourself, it takes so much energy. And especially because in the Isle of Broken, I think one of the big rewards that a lot of us choose it unconsciously is because in the Isle of the Broken, you're never alone. That's kind of one of those things. It's like you're never alone on the Isle of the Broken. There's always a hero, a villain, and a victim. Always. There's always somebody who needs rescuing. Sometimes it's you. There's always somebody that needs a hero. Sometimes they need you. There's always those that need a villain, and sometimes that's you, or sometimes you do it with others. But you're never alone on the Isle of the Broken. It's part of one of the reasons it could be kind of understandable that people choose to stay. Like, you're always going to be able to find somebody who feels like they need you, and you're always going to feel like you need somebody else, and you're always going to find that those people are there, that they're there. It's understandable. If you don't ever want to be alone, you could stay on the Isle of the Broken. There are other places you could also set sail and explore and find where you won't be alone, but you have to be willing to at least take a journey away from the port and check out other ones and know that if you want, you can come back. You can come back to the Isle of the Broken. It's always going to be there, at least in some level for the foreseeable future, because that's often, it feels like a pocket world that we go through to experience in order to get to where we're prepared and ready and feel good about setting sail away from it to go explore other things. Because it's definitely an ego island, for lack of a better way to put it. But the message for those who feel called to it is be willing to listen to the whisper of your intuition over the loudness of your ego, even if that means, releasing faithfully relationships and situations and things that you formerly felt comfortable with, or that you felt like were bringing you more reward than pleasure. I'm talking about things that avoid like real inner work and solitude and being willing to, like, it's funny, it's kind of an in and out thing. It's not like let go of everything. It's not like drop all your bags and jump in the water. You could if you want. You want to walk the plank? Walk the plank. I'm the last person that's going to be like, no, that's the wrong answer. Like, you want to do that? Do it. But what I'm more recommending is, like, be willing to simply set things down for a little while and go off exploring in the woods. Even if you do it for 5 minutes, if you do it for 5 weeks, like 5 months, whatever it is, like, just be willing to do it, be willing to recognize that sometimes when your heart feels called to a different direction than those who are wanting to, it's not that they're necessarily all on the Isle of the Broken, but like if you resonate that you've been in that place in your mind, then it is very likely that anyone and everyone that you've been interacting with before has also been on that island with you. So I mean, when you're looking at setting sail away from it, a lot of times when we want to go, like, a lot of people hold themselves back from success because they feel like they cannot take their loved ones with them. And it's usually because when we look at them, we're observing the parts in them that keep them stuck there, because we're subconsciously observing the things that are keeping us stuck there. And a lot of times we do it to each other also through obligation or misunderstandings about what loyalty means, or even devotion or friendship or love or things like that, and we hold ourselves there in a very like codependent way, afraid to, it's almost like if you have a kid who's, they're old enough to go out and be on their own, to go backpacking through Europe, to go to college, to do whatever it is that their heart feels called to do, but they're too afraid to go because you have a limp as their parent, and they're worried that that'll get worse and they'll need to take care of you, or or a hundred other things. Like we obligate ourselves to situations where we don't need to obligate ourselves, and especially when we really develop a rapport and trust with spirit rather than with 3D things, rather than with just people themselves and stuff. And we kind of, it's funny because there's kind of a lot of us who go through experiences where we may say that we trust in spirit and grand designs and grand plans, or even free will and magic, and whatever pathway you come from or are headed on next. We say that we believe in it, but then in those moments when our intuition whispers for us to do something that our ego goes, wait a minute, that sounds crazy, we show whether or not we really do have faith in their spirit and higher powers, and whether you're monotheist, pantheist, atheist, even, like any direction that you come from. Like when we say that we have faith in spirit, and we then show that we don't, because we don't listen to that little intuition that it always whispers. It always whispers. All the it's not only my experience either. Those that are really like master manifestors and gurus and things like that, they say the same thing too. Your intuition, your heart, spirit never shouts. It doesn't shout. It doesn't have to. It doesn't see anything that we're doing as a bad thing. And like working with it is optional, because we can get through life, without actually having full faith in it or listening to it. Lots of people do. But I think that's where messages like this are coming in, and I know I'm not the only one speaking similar messages, is that, we collectively as humanity have gone through hero villain victim paradigms for centuries. We have. That's that's a lot of what's gotten us caught in various different wars and battles, and like caused a lot of the shakeups that are going on now. Like we have manifested it ourselves. And so if you feel called to sail away from the Isle of the Broken, consider it a good thing. Consider it a fun thing, because while there are lots of other pocket worlds and dimensions and things out there that you can sail to, this is kind of your opportunity to help give birth to a new one where people can go, where things are understood, where it's not a blindness and a fragility, where it's not an ignorance to, where it's not a detachment from like realities of the world. It's an intentional cultivating of an absence to brokenness, which starts within. Like, you ain't got to go around and ignore every injustice that's going on around you, but start first and look within yourself where you feel like you're being unjust to yourself. And look at the ways that others are triggering you, if they are, that feel unjust to you. And look at one where you have been unjust in similar ways in the past, so that you can have understanding and empathy of it. And then look for why those, like, you're always reflecting. Always. Always. If somebody else is doing some shit, so are you. It's not always like one-to-one as in you're doing the same things, but usually you're doing something that is motivated by a similar fear that is locked into a feeling of brokenness. And when you can get to a place to where you can recognize you are not broken. You're not broken. Even if you got some chips and things like that, like, all the pieces are around you. Many, many ancient practices talk about soul retrieval, things of that nature. That's because all the pieces are always there. You may not always have them within your energetic body or your physical body at all times, but those are dependent upon what you manifest and what you want to create and how conscious you want to be of such things. But there's never there's never a brokenness there. It doesn't, at least it doesn't have to exist that way. You don't have to view yourself as broken any longer if you don't want to. You don't have to view yourself as not good enough or too much or sick or, you don't have to give up on other people because society says that they're broken or sick or a villain or things like that. You don't have to be pulled into the world of narcissists and things like that, which has grown a lot over the past 10 years at least. I mean, it's always been there, but it's grown a lot in emphasis. And I think it's also important to recognize, too, something that Spirit brought to me kind of slowly but surely, is that in order to recognize villains, in order to recognize victims, we have to be in an energy of also being villains and victims ourselves. It's kind of a part of a universal law, like that which you see, you are. That which you experience, you are. It's kind of the other side of, like, you manifest that which you feel and think about most consistently. It's like the reflection of what you feel and think about most consistently can be shown in what you are observing in others. If you are observing a wholeness in others, regardless of what their 3D experience may be, you are observing a wholeness within yourself. If you are observing a brokenness within others around you, whether you deem it to be good, bad, intentional, unintentional, etc., you are observing brokenness within yourself. And especially in terms of twin flames, a lot of us do this even more vehemently with our twins than we do with anybody else. And that's the great thing about this kind of light work, and in terms of the twin flame dynamic itself, is that if you can't, you may not be able to trust that everybody else is reflecting you. I think there are times when we're not necessarily fully reflecting somebody, but I think in the moments when we're not fully reflecting them is when our paths diverge. Like, because like we stay along, we walk along with those in community that are resonant to our own vibration. So when our paths when our paths diverge, or we feel repelled from certain things, I think that's when, like, the reflection is simply in the divergence rather than in the actual action of things, and probably the reason for the divergence and stuff like that. But otherwise, we always reflect them. But the one person in this world for a twin flame that you can always guarantee is reflecting you at, almost one-to-one for what other people are doing, even if it's different things or different stuff. Like, it's often timed together. You don't always see it in the moment, but you will get the information along the way. They definitely reflect us. Like, that's part of what twin flame stuff is. It's like the ultimate reflection. So, like, if you're looking at them and you're viewing them as broken, like, they can't talk to me. They can't grow up. They're continually choosing toxic third-party situations, or maybe they're in a reasonable third-party situation, and then you're just like, see, there must be something broken within me that they won't choose me, that I'm not chosen, that they're not willing to leave their house or their family or their marriage or this or that. Like, we get into the aisle of the broken with them. And guess what? Guess what they are doing? Guess why they are staying? Guess why they tell you that they hate it and they want to go and they don't? Because they too are caught on the aisle of the broken. They see themselves as broken. And because they see themselves as broken, they see everyone else as broken. And if everyone else is broken and they are broken, and there feels like there's no way to get out of that pocket world, then what reason is there for them to try to follow their hearts, which feel broken, which mean that yours must be broken too, and that anyone else they try to be with is also going to be broken, and that they're just going to keep confirming that reality because they're living in the aisle of the broken. And here's the thing, if they're living in the aisle of the broken, so are you. If you're observing them and feeling like they are broken, they're not good enough, they're a player, they do this and that, if you're observing them going through that healing experience in that, you're co-manifesting that. You're keeping the two of you there on the aisle of the broken for even longer. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. I think a lot of us have to go through that experience to be able to get off that isle. You know? And the thing is that when you start to release yourself, when you start to pack your bags and say, okay, you know what? I know that Spirit's got everybody taken care of on the Isle of the Broken. It's not an experience here that's meant to torture anybody. And I know, and set your beliefs of it, because that which you believe then becomes your compass for what you go around. You're never going to leave the Isle of the Broken if you feel like the people that you love are going to live there forever. That you're going to be caught in feelings of like being too good for everybody. Like, am I really too good that I can leave this island but nobody else can? You're going to pedestal yourself and them. You're going to get into splitting. Don't go there. Cultivate a reality where that brokenness no longer exists, to where everybody on the Isle of the Broken will leave the Isle of the Broken at some point, and they might set sail and go to other islands and come back for a minute. It depends on what their particular hearts and spirits call them to do. And that could be a short amount of time or a long amount of time, but don't get yourself caught up in the experience of time, because there are plenty of moments in life when you're having fun and time flies. And I mean, that could be anything from 30 minutes to 5 years. Like, time can fly for you when you are not on the Island of the Broken. But on the Island of the Broken, it feels like time drags on in the longest dirges you've ever heard, And so when you set your sails, set them with intentions of gratitude and wonder. Set them with an attitude of embracing absurdities, of not needing to know who, what, why, how, where, when. Just know how you feel. Just learn to listen to the whisper of intuition that says, come this way. Let them go. Go towards them. Go within. Go without. Go into solitude. Go be social. Write in your journal. Call somebody you haven't talked to in forever. Reach out to your twin. Don't reach out to your twin. It's always a whisper, though, and it's never fear-based. But it sometimes can take some time to discern, though, because our intuition may whisper something that freaks our ego out. Like, go into solitude for a while, and that means like letting everybody go. And a lot of those people are not going to fully understand. And like, your intuition might say, do not fear for them. It will actually turn out really good for them. Or, your intuition might say, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Part of your experience is in the sadness of letting this stuff go, the old you stuff go. It's okay to experience that. You won't stay there. They won't stay there. It will get better on all sides. Just trust and follow me. But then your ego is going to go, well, but what will people think? And what if somebody, acts immaturely? What if drama happens? What if people think you're weird or crazy or whatever thing? That's ego in there, trying to scare you out of doing it, because intuition often does not explain. Like, it might give you some explanation, and the better you get at discerning the difference between intuition and ego and spirit and ancestors and other people's energy, what a mouthful, the better you can get at discerning the explanations that intuition will give. But often it's not, like, ego will give you explanations in words and books and things like that. Intuition, because it's connected to spirit and our inner beings, will often give you, it will communicate explanations to you through music, or parts in books, or signs, or stories from other people. Like, you're not always going to get that, like, in my mind, it's like if we connected with alien life and they had the language that was completely unlike ours, and vice versa, and you then needed to learn to be able to communicate with them, and then you find that they don't even have an external language. They communicate telepathically. And then what do you do? Like, that's a whole different kind of language barrier, but it can be overcome. In some way, you can figure out how to communicate, even if it's just through body language. But that's often the way that spirit speaks to us, through our intuition, through our dreams, our knowings, our daydreams, things like that. And once you start to listen to that and to not fear, Uh, Divine Maverick did, and you have to go back and look for it. It was one of the moon readings where it was like releasing a fear of death. And I definitely recommend you go back to that. And I think I did something about it too. I'm not positive. Lots of people have done stuff about it. But releasing the fear of death is also releasing the fear of loss and releasing the fear of endings and beginnings and things like that. It's very unburdening, unbridled, burden lifting, freeing. It's light work to get to a place to where you're not afraid to release people, places, and things, and you're no longer doing it because like you're not doing it because a bad thing happened. Or even if a bad thing happened, that you're not doing it just because the bad thing happened. Like when you feel your intuition saying, it's time to release this. It's time to release this. This isn't as much fun as as going off in this direction. I don't know that that's necessarily an intuition thing, but like, when you are releasing things because it feels like time, and you release them with love and faithfulness and an openness to them returning, to you returning, to things like that. It's such a freeing experience to do things from that island as opposed to doing them following the rules of the island as a broken, where you never release anything until it's terrible or unbearable, where partings are not just bittersweet sorrows, there are fights, and there must be bad guys and good guys and things like that. When you get away from that and you get towards recognizing that all experiences are beautiful, including the in-betweens, the separations, the silences, the sounds, just all the things, that they're all beautiful, that they all bring more beautiful experiences, and that there really isn't anything ever wrong. And again, getting into that place where you no longer feel like things have to be broken for you to release them, especially because a lot of times things will want to be released from our lives so that we can welcome in things that we've been calling in. It's not that we don't have infinite space necessarily, too, but as a part of our human experience, we do often only have so much, like, emotional space to be able to hold space for that which we want. And it's never a bad thing to, like, choose one experience over the other, regardless of whatever they are. I just saw your message to you, observer, and you're welcome. But, get to a place where you can release things because you're happy. Get to a place where you can recognize that when you hit a fork in the road and you feel called to go one direction and a loved one wants to go in another direction, that you're not fearful, that you're not looking at it going, I might not ever see you again. That you have faith. Like if it's somebody you definitely want to see again, that you have faith that you'll see them up ahead. There'll be another couple of forks in the road. You'll make some different turns. You'll meet some different people, and you will come back together at a different fork because the two of you were meant to do that. Or not even necessarily meant to, but because you both chose to. You both took paths that took you there. And then likewise, when it's not somebody that you're definitely sure that you want to keep in your vibration, and you get to a point where it's time to say goodbye, don't be in a space of like, oh my gosh, it's horrible that I have to say goodbye. Instead, like, cherish those moments that you get to have it's funny to say, a happy ending. I bet you never thought about it that way. I haven't until this moment, but so many people talk about wanting to have their happy endings, and what they think about is Snow White and Prince Charming kissing each other, and then you imagine happy family and stuff up until they get to the end of their lives and they feel rich and full of love and life and all the good things. What if sometimes happy endings are actually an ending to something that was happy before it became unhappy, or before it became really unhappy? And therein is another reason that I'm going to be getting into, as recommended by a family member, talking about intention work. I'll get to it in there, because sometimes we call in experiences that we think that we want, and we don't recognize that when we call in an experience, we're going to call in both the shadow and the light of it. You know, we're going to be calling in both, and calling in happy endings is wonderful, especially if you're going for the, you know, the first, like, more common version of what we think about when we think of happy endings. But the shadow side to that would be that then you're also calling in happy endings to different situations. You know, like, you might leave a job that you very much liked and that was good because you found a job somewhere else with someone that you've worked with before that pays more and is closer to new experiences you want to have. And you may, you know, you may look at the old place and go, but I know the grass isn't greener on the other side. Am I leaving behind something that feels mostly good just because I want more money or I want to be closer to so and so? No. Get to a place where it's like, you know, how often do you get the opportunity to have a happy ending like that? You know, to where it's not broken. It's not that it was a bad experience. It's not that you might not be walking into something that isn't quite as good as what you had, you know, but you can have anything you want if you take that new job and it's, you know, yeah, it pays better and you get to be with your friend, but it's really shitty in all other ways. Maybe other people there have bad boundaries, or like you end up in the aisle of the broken again with them. You can go back. Like, you can find a way to apologize, to come in, to do that. And it's also a really good reason that when you have experience a time for an ending of a situation or a place or a relationship, that you end it with integrity. Not necessarily to leave the door open, like, so that you can always come back in, but simply because you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel in the future. And I mean, other than when you're cultivating the sense of, like, that you're leaving the pocket world of the broken, like, you're going to know in the future you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have moments of shadow and light, happiness and sadness, things like that. But as long as you're cultivating your compass to, you know, help keep co-manifesting, you know, the Isle of Wholeness, let's call it that, the Isle of Wholeness, where everybody is whole and just going through different experiences and different levels, and that's a beautiful part of the world, then you can have that safety that you thought you had on the Isle of the Broken because you were never alone. And then wherever you go, whether you're together or alone with anybody, you always feel a sense of wholeness and rightness and faithfulness and righteousness and all the, you know, all the things in there, even when you're going through an ickier, squishier experience. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this here. It won't be my last talk about this, I don't think, but it feels like the message has gotten to where it is in a good place for those of you who are ready for it now and in the future. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Or you'll hear me in the next video.